SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB.
Good morning. Welcome to the Joint Committee on Appropriations. We are going to move into budget setting, but before we do that, what we do every morning is start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Representative Kolbeck, will you please start us?
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Representative Kolbeck. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and for the members of the listening audience and the people here in the gallery. We started with putting flags here in the rooms, and I know I've said this before, but in our committee rooms, we've got flags here that Senator Zickman thought would be kind of a nice idea, and so there are a number of appropriators and people and stuff. We got some money put together, and we put these flags in each one of the committee rooms. And on the base of the flag is a commemoration or a name of somebody that served in the military or somebody that wanted to have a name of a loved one on the base of those flags. And I just want you to know on the base of the American flag is my father, Raymond Kolbeck, served in World War II in the United States Army. And every day when I come in here and I say the Pledge of Allegiance, I think of my dad. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you, Representative Kolbeck. Okay, so I want to welcome all of our listeners and those of you watching on South Dakota Public Broadcasting. And a reminder, please make sure your cell phones are off. Lobbyists must be wearing badges for the organization they're representing, and all testimony and questions will go through the chair. At this time, I'd like to ask the Secretary to call the roll.
Senators and Representatives, Ms. Gimmons. Here. Auk. Here. Casson. I'm here. Moore. Here. Vilhauer. Here. Carly.
Here.
Voida. Jorgensen.
Here.
Howard.
Here.
Foster.
Here.
Sharda.
Here.
Mucky.
Here.
Zickmund. Colbeck.
Here.
Norstrup.
Here.
Lapke.
Here.
Otten. Derby.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We have minutes to approve. Representative Colbeck.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I move to approve the minutes of Thursday, March 5th, 2026.
Motion by Representative Colbeck, seconded by Representative Mucky. Discussion on the motion? No discussion on the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This time we'd like to have the pages come up front here. Turn the microphone on and please introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from and what your future plans are and your favorite hobby.
Hi, my name is Whitney Martinson. I'm a senior from Watertown High School. I don't have definite future plans yet, but I was admitted to Georgetown University where I'm looking at studying public policy. And one of my favorite hobbies is speech and debate.
Wow, I've got a couple friends that went to Georgetown University, and congratulations. That's a golden ticket there. Good job. Next.
Hi, my name is Morgan Christensen. I am a senior from Sioux Valley High School, Volga. My current future plans are going to basic for the National Guard and go to a school at SDSU for political science. Yeah.
Yes, Senator
couple-
Vilhauer. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead and finish.
A couple hobbies are
Yep.
golfing and wrestling.
Fantastic. Yes, Senator Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Personal privilege, please.
Yes.
Miss Martinson was guardian of the gold at homecoming, which is Princess, Princess, whatever you want to call that position. So she's an outstanding young person from Watertown. So great to have her here this week.
Well done. Glad to have you both here. Representative Norstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for Whitney.
Yes, Representative?
Well, you look very familiar. Where have we seen you before?
I was a term 1 page here last year.
Follow up?
Follow up.
Yes.
What's the motivation for coming back the second time?
I had a great experience last year. I absolutely loved it, and I want to learn more.
Thank you.
Representative Norstrup, I really thought you were going to say she had worked for Thunder Road.
Mr. Chair, she's one of the few teenagers in South Dakota that has not.
That has not worked for Thunder Road. Okay. Any further introductions, personal privileges, or announcements? Okay, seeing none. Today, we're starting the end of the budget setting, and so as many of you know, it's kind of a bumpy ride moving out here. So I'm going to tell you what the schedule is, and then I'll repeat it. But we are going to take a recess for an hour, and then come back, reconvene at 10 o'clock. Okay, the Senate has some work to do. And at 10 o'clock, we will be doing budget setting for the PUC, State Treasurer, Department of Transportation, and the Department of Ag and Natural Resources. Then we meet as a leadership, we meet with the governor at 4:30 after session and have that discussion. And then we will meet this evening after 15 minutes after meeting with the governor at 4:30. And this evening we will tackle the Department of Corrections, Unified Judicial System, Department of Health, Department of Human Services, Department of Revenue, Board of Technical Education. And that's because we've got inflation. We want to lock down our inflation number, and those departments all have provider inflation or state employees or some mix in there. And then tomorrow, Tuesday, we will do the Bureau of Finance and Management, the Attorney General, the Department of Education, and Department of Social Services. That'll be tomorrow. This evening, we'll get a briefing on the supplemental bill this evening. And then tomorrow, we'll do the supplemental bill, the levy bill, and the general appropriations bill. And our plane, we've got the landing gear down. Senator, do you want to talk about the tray seat stuff? We're landing this plane on the 35th day. That's the goal.
This is the fun part. Seats in the upright position, trays locked in their position. And if you hear somebody say, brace yourself, that means put your head between your legs, and we're coming in. So,
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Representative Northrup.
The good co-chair forgot to mention where the tickets were to.
Oh, yeah.
We've
well,
got 105 passengers, all with tickets to different locations.
Thank you for adding that. Okay, I'm going to go through real quick, and then we're going to go to recess. So we're going to recess for an hour. 10 o'clock, we're taking 4 budget settings, meet with the governor, come back in the evening, come back tomorrow. And tonight is corrections, judicial system, health, human services, revenue, tech ed, correct? Oh, and I missed one. Department of Labor and Regulation. Thank you. Tomorrow will be BFM, AG, Education, and Department of Social Services. Any questions from the committee? All right, we will be at recess. Thank you.
Senators Caucus.
SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from peer. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. From choir to debate to theater, SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts Programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB helps shape South Dakota's future by educating, informing, and inspiring the next generation of thinkers, leaders, and creators. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB serves South Dakota through an interconnected communication system that is on 24/7, 365. The first place for Amber Alerts, public safety announcements, and EAS messages. SDPB keeps public servants and citizens informed. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota Legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. From choir to debate to theater, SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts Programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.
Good morning. Welcome. We're coming out of recess for the Joint Committee on Appropriations, and we are going to do budget settings for Public Utilities Commission, State Treasurer, Department of Transportation, and Department of Agricultural Natural Resources. And what we're going to do is for each of these, maybe a little different, but I think it's an improvement. Every time we strive for a little more discussion and transparency and involvement. So we're going to have staff do their report. Then we'll open it up for discussion, and those committee members that have a motion sheet are going to pitch their motion sheet. We're all aware of them, but we're going to hear from that. Then we'll have the department come up, either as an opponent or proponent, that's fine. And then we'll close out with BFM, opponent or proponent. I'll make a decision on the fly. I think most of them will just move into make a motion and we'll vote. There might be a couple along the way where we'll huddle. And if any committee member at any time has questions, concerns, and wants to huddle, feel free. We're going to do 4 of them this morning. This will get us kind of going. Then we meet with the governor at 4:30 today. We'll meet for an evening session afterwards and handle about, I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 budget settings tonight. And then we'll come back with the final 4 budgets on tomorrow. This evening we'll get a supplemental bill hearing briefing. And if we're comfortable as a group, we could pass that out tonight if we wanted to. If there's any questions, we're perfectly on time. We can do the supplemental, the levy setting, and the general appropriations bill tomorrow. And tomorrow is day 35. So we're in a good spot. Feel good about it. Slow me down at any time. We're in no hurry. Are there any questions from the committee now? Any questions from the committee? Senator Otten, you want to add something to this?
Is this where I put the spurs to it or no?
Not quite. Not quite. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, well, we're going to start with budget setting for Public Utilities Commission. And staff, you want to lead us out?
So for this budget, all items are fund swaps with no new authority requested by the agency. 3 of the requested items have alternate motions.
And what are those alternate motions?
One would be to fund a regional transmission organization analyst. One would be to fund staff time who are working on ITO related items. And the last would be to give the full request of the agency swapping funds from the telephone solicitation fund to the gross receipts tax fund.
And this has got my name on it, and actually I'm just kind of being spun up on this at this moment. Why don't you talk about this fund swap?
So the fund swap was requested in the agency's budget. It was partially given to them in the governor's recommended budget. From my understanding, there was a mistake on during the creation of the GZ, and so only a partial amount of that money was approved by the governor. The other portion, about $3,600, was not approved by the governor, but that was due to a misunderstanding.
So how much is it The total?
The total amount would be $11,786, swapping OE to OE from the telephone solicitation fund to the gross receipts tax fund.
Okay, and why are there no numbers up there?
Both are other funds, so they cancel each other out.
Okay, so you do that rather than put them in there and cancel out? They're Oh, there isn't enough room. Hey, these are all if you have these questions, ask them at any time. So the reason this in and out is not up there is there's not enough room.
Yeah, we're adding a positive 11,786 to other funds and then subtracting 11,786 from other funds, so it shows up as 0.
Okay, any other questions on that? I know this is, I won't call it a surprise, but it's new information. Thank you. Representative Casson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Are there, in the future, are there going to be other ones like this that we're just going to have zeros across the board, or is this just an anomaly?
Yes, there will, Representative.
And we'll discuss each one. Thank you.
Okay, good question. All right, moving on, the other two, Representative Norstrup, would you like to discuss the RTO Regional Transmission Organization Analyst Budget Transfer and the Staff Analyst RTO Work Budget Transfers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you prefer I do it from here or the testifier chair?
You can, I think you can do it from here.
Okay,
'Cause
thank you.
You're on the committee and made the motion sheet. I think that's fine.
Thank you. There are two line items, and they're both very similar. They're for an analyst to work with the Regional Transmission Organization math. And the $170,000 is full-time, and that includes the wages, the fringe benefits, and maintaining the office, the items within the office. And then there is another staffer is going to be working on this part-time, and that's the $64,000. But basically, it's those two line items. And the explanation behind it is there are regional transmission organizations, and one of the neat things about being a legislator is you get to learn a lot of stuff. And so here's what I've learned. There's a group called MISO, and MISO includes Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, all the way over to Wisconsin and all the way down to Louisiana. And that is one organization called MISO, and we're a member of that. And basically, everything along the I-9, most of the things along the I-90 corridor is part of MISO, and everything generally within 50 miles of North Dakota is also within MISO. So it's kind of an L-shaped. And then most of South Dakota is in a group called SPP, which is the Southwest Power Pool. And the last one is just, it's officially called the Northwest, and it includes everything from Seattle to Oregon to Idaho to, it looks like Utah, Wyoming, Montana, and into the Black Hills. And so the point of the story is we're a member of 3 different organizations that do power line, they build power lines. And I believe somewhere in my reading I read one of them is considering a $30 billion $30 billion transmission line. So with all these different organizations, we have to show up and argue the point that South Dakota doesn't want to pay more than their fair share of the division when you, for example, have $30 billion. So if we don't show up with the math, if we don't show up with the calculator and the spreadsheet, then the other states do. And if we don't have the information to argue back at, then we end up getting more of those billions of dollars put onto on the utility payers of South Dakota. So it's my opinion that this is the least expensive thing we can do, is hire these analysts to provide information to those transmission organizations so that we can maintain the least amount possible in that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And now, Commissioner Fegan. Do you have any follow-up comments to Representative Norstrup? Please introduce yourself and welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Christy Fegan with the Public Utilities Commission and members of the committee. Actually, I don't think I have to talk very much because Representative Nordstrom just did a great job. 2 points. The main thing is this is taxpayers' money or ratepayers' money or members' money. And so we're trying to save money for those people. We are in 3 different markets. That's unusual. You go to Nebraska, 1 market. If you go to Kansas, 1 market. If you go to Oklahoma, 1 market. We are in 3. And we need to be at the table because that's where everything is being made. So we are filling, and this is my second point, we are filling an FTE that we have had open since 2020 because we were in a structural deficit. And we didn't think it was conservative to fill that position when we've been in a structural deficit because of our gross receipts tax and our telecom going down. So that's why we're coming to you. We believe that impacts all customers in our state and not just investor-owned utilities. And then the second point is that the legislature has had a great reputation nationwide of a conservative budgeting. And you guys look at structural deficits as a negative thing, and I appreciate that. You balance your revenues and your expenses every single year. And so we just need help on general funds to help us have a voice at the table to support ratepayers at the end of the day. Actually, Representative Norstrup, you did it well for us. And then I do have just a couple Me Too's if you would allow that, Commissioner, or not Commissioner. You could come and be a commissioner. We have an opening.
Well,
Chairman.
actually, who are your Me Too's? Because
The Me Too's are the cooperatives and the investor owns. And they're
no,
listed,
I
so.
think if I open it up for one, we're going to have a flood of additional.
And they're listed as proponents, so we're good. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. This time, Commissioner Twilliger, BFM, comments on these alternative motion sheets.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Jim Twilliger with the Bureau of Finance and Management. Yeah, so specifically on the motion sheet, I think it's A5 and A7. So just kind of to maybe zoom out and back up a little bit. So we went through the budget process this last fall. Certainly understand some of the issues with the gross receipts tax fund, which is the other funds that have paid for these expenses in the past. And so that's why included in the recommendation was a funding change of $424,000 in general funds, which is about a 56% increase in the general funds in the PUC's budget. The other piece of this, which is the 234, which is the total of A5 and A7, we didn't recommend that portion. And the balance we're trying to strike with that is, again, kind of zooming out, if we fund everything that is requested with every agency's budget that comes through the budget process, we'll be short by $100 million plus. I mean, that's just the fact and the nature of the beast every single year. And so we have to balance things out as it comes through that budget process, especially last fall when our revenues were a little bit soft. We recommended 0, as you all know. And then fast forward to here we are here in the last few weeks. Thankfully, we've had a little bit of improvement in the revenue reflected by your adopted estimates. And then when that happens, a lot of folks show up and say, hey, would you consider these other items that weren't recommended in our budget? And so on this specifically, in the gross receipts tax fund, you know, at the end of fiscal year 2025, there was over $2.2 million into that particular fund. And in fiscal year 2025, it was only running about a little over $440,000 structural deficit. So if we plug in 424, which was the recommendation, it gets fairly close. And we felt that the additional 234 wasn't needed immediately. We support those FTE. The purpose is what they're there for. We believe they can continue to be funded with other funds for another year or two before you need to make this funding change. And oh, by the way, that still buys additional time. Maybe things will change when it comes to, you know, the trajectory of the tax, gross receipts tax fund and so on and so forth. So the immediacy of this funding change isn't there, in my opinion, for A5 and A7. So I'd respectfully ask that the committee oppose those two particular motion sheets. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Representative Northrup, rebuttal?
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question of the PUC financial analyst?
Sure.
Cindy, if you'd come forward. Over the years, we've had the PUC generally financed by user fees, for example, landlines. And we all know that the landlines have dramatically decreased over the last 10 years. But talk about that. What's happening to your fees that were helpful in budgeting for the PUC over the years?
Welcome, and please identify yourself.
Mr. Chair, I'm Cindy Kemnitz. I'm the finance manager for the PUC. Over the years, the big thing with telecom, of course, is the landlines. Most of you probably don't have a landline anymore. So that has really declined for our gross receipts. The other thing with the gross receipts, we do tax wireless, but so much of that now can be counted as interstate or out of state, so then we don't benefit from any of those revenues. So so those are the two things that have really declined in the telecom realm.
Follow up.
All right, follow up.
A couple numbers jumped out at me. The good commissioner mentioned that the end of year balance on the fund that would pay this would be 2.2 million, but I remember a chart that says recently, and that when you look at the balance on one particular day, that doesn't tell the story. Probably a better way to look at it is what's the high number and what's the low number. I remember a chart that looked at recently that said the low number is about a $500,000. Would you agree with that?
Mr. Chair, yes. At the end of the year, when you look at, he was looking at, I believe, the condition statements we always take at the end of the year, which is June 30th. When we collect all of our tax, it happens between May 1st and July 15th, or the big majority. So our cash balance is always going to be higher during that time. I believe at the end of February, it was about 800,000, and so we won't be getting revenues in for the next 2 months yet. And so I just did a projection, and I'm projecting around 500,000 is probably about our low spot for this year. Which, if you continue to look, I think you guys all got a graph that kind of looks like this. And so these are the red is the year ending balances, where the blue is where the monthly balances are, and you can definitely see the trend line there.
Mr. Chair, follow up.
I received that. I thought that was my echocardiogram during session. I was a little worried. Representative Northrup.
So let's connect two different numbers. So the projection is about $500,000 at the low point in the current budget. And then the other one is, it was testified prior that the deficit was, I believe, 0.4 million. So if your low number is $500,000 and you're running a deficit of 0.4, doesn't that mean that you're going to get pretty close to zero in the next budget year?
Mr. Chair, we definitely could. And another thing that I'd like to point out is that position, you know, the 400,000 deficit, if they gave us 400,000, that would kind of shore that up for a while. But this other position that we're asking for, we don't have that. We're not spending that money right now. So if we had that in there, if we funded that RTO position with gross receipts tax, then we would probably go into the negative, or we could.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Questions from the committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to recommendations. We will take these three alternate motion sheets one at a time.
Mr. Chair.
We have a recommendation, or Representative Norstrup, something?
Mr. Chair,
You,
I would make a motion that the committee approve A7 and A5.
take them in, let's take them individually.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would make a motion that we approve A5 for $170,232 to fund a full-time regional transmission organization analyst.
Okay, Representative Norstrup made the motion, and we're on A5, correct? Who had the second over here? Senator Miskimmons. Discussion on the motion. We're on alternative motion A5. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Secretary, call the roll. Ms. Gimmons.
Okay. Senators and Representatives, Ms. Gimmons,
Aye.
Auk,
Aye.
Casson, Moore,
Aye.
Billhauer, Carly,
Aye.
Boyda, Jorgensen, Howard, Foster, Sharda,
Aye.
Mucky,
Aye.
Zickmund, Colbeck,
Aye.
Norstrup,
Aye.
Lapke,
Aye.
Otten,
No.
Derby.
Aye.
16 yeas, 2 nays.
Okay. Motion sheet, alternative motion A5 hereby passes. Representative Norstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move A7 for $64,151 to fund a staff analyst for the RTO work budget for the regional transmission person, part-time.
Motion by Representative Norstrup, seconded by Senator Howard. Discussion on the motion.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Norstrup.
One thing you'll see on this is the first one we voted on just a moment ago is the thought process to hire somebody with industry experience with a lot of a very high-level person to come in and do that. The second one is part-time and more of an entry-level position. So that's why the discrepancy between the dollar amounts is part-time and less experience. So with that, I would recommend that that we adopt A7.
We have a motion to adopt A7. Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Gimmons,
Aye.
Auk,
Aye.
Casson, Moore,
Aye.
Billhauer, Carly,
Aye.
Boyda, Jorgensen, Howard, Foster, Sharda,
Aye.
Mucky,
Aye.
Zickmund, Colbeck,
Aye.
Norstrup,
Aye.
Lapke,
Aye.
Foster, Otten,
No.
Derby.
Aye.
15 yeas, 3 nays.
A7 hereby passes. The next one is A9, and we talked a little about that. That is the fund swap, 11,686 total operating expense to operating expense. This is a fund
Mr.
swap.
Chair. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move we adopt A9.
Motion by Representative Casson, seconded by Senator Vilhauer. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Hauk.
Aye.
Casson. Moore.
Aye.
Billhauer. Carly.
Aye.
Boyda. Jorgensen. Howard. Foster. Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky.
Aye.
Zickman. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrip.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten.
Aye.
And Derby.
Aye.
18 yeas.
Motion to adopt A9 hereby passes. Okay, I think we're probably ready for a recommendation. Senator Lapke.
Mr. Chair, I recommend we approve the remainder of the governor's budget for the Public Utilities Commission.
We have a motion by Senator Lapke, second by Senator Voida. Oh, yep, good point. This will smooth out as we go along here. Okay, we have a recommendation. Okay, here we go. Representative Norstrip.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you go back up to the top again? I want to make sure that all the governor's ones were checked. It's a 0. That's what got my attention. So we're, I think, good to go. So yes, thank you. Mr. Chair, I move to set the budgets for the Public Utility Commission, PUC, at the levels detailed in the Public Utility Commission motion sheet, which includes $1,421,812 in general funds, $421,672 in federal fund expenditure authority, $3,554,043 in other expenditure authority, and 31.2 FTEs.
Motion by Representative Norstrip, and where was the second over here? Mucky, Representative Mucky. Discussion on the motion. So I have a question, I think, just to edify, as when we hit those buttons, that obviously automatically changes the motion, correct? Yep. Just so everybody knows, when we make these changes, they automatically move into the motion. Okay. Representative Norstrip was saying he was doing all that math in his head. Yeah. Right. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Hauk.
Aye.
Casson. Moore.
Aye.
Billhauer. Carly.
Aye.
Boyda. Jorgensen. Howard. Foster. Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky.
Aye.
Zickman. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrip.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten. Derby.
Aye.
18 yeas.
Motion to set the budget for the Public Utilities Commission hereby passes. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the State Treasurer. We are going to just kind of move through the same process here. Staff? Anything you'd like to say on the State Treasurer?
So for state treasurer, we have changes to unclaimed property, or the unclaimed property division. Some increase in payments, fraud detection services, and then a few alternative motions in the operations budget for some additional FTEs. And that's it.
Discussion on the motion, or discussion on the State Treasurer, Representative Jorgensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So actually, on C2, I will not be moving that one forward. I plan to just stay with what the governor is recommending on the administrative clerk. On C4, a claims analyst specialist, and this came about because the Department of Legislative Audit has recommended, when they audited, the treasurer recommended a separation of duties and a need for improved, as I said, separations of duties within the unclaimed property division, additional staffing
is required to ensure that incompatible functions are appropriately segregated. And the claims analyst specialist will perform claim analysis and serve as subject matter resource for unclaimed property claims. These positions will be responsible for reviewing complex high-dollar claims, including estates, trusts, businesses, powers of attorneys, and foreign claims across any scenario. This is really essential, I believe, based on looking into this. These positions will introduce independent multi-level review for complex and high-dollar claims, reducing fraud risk and preventing single-person control over documentation, validation, and approval decisions. So this will also help to address the Department of Legislative Audit's concerns. So I think that's why we should fund these positions, 2 positions. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Jorgensen, I see your name on another one for printing.
They have an increase in printing, and so that was just to cover that increase of $3,000.
You are or not?
Yes, I'm bringing that one forward as well. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Just for the committee's edification, that the printing was not on on this list.
Okay, if it's not on the list, we don't have to bring it forward.
You will?
Well, I had the motion sheet in. It's been in for quite a while.
Right, but are you going to move it? It was not on the motion sheet list. It's not figured into the...
Okay, I'll just move the other one, the $174,000.
Okay. All right, so I think we clarified that. Any further discussion from the committee? Yep, Senator Carley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the claims analyst specialist, it's 174,000 of funds. It's coming from general. And so I think a question that's been discussed is this coming from the unclaimed property? And my understanding is that 55 million plus that's transferred to the general funds, it is indirectly coming from that unclaimed property, and therefore it is covering that position. If anyone wants to dispute or clarify that, that's fine, but I'm pretty sure that's the understanding.
Okay, we'll have the state treasurer come up at this time. Morning, Mr. Treasurer. Please identify yourself.
Morning, Mr. Chair, State Treasurer Josh Hader. I'll go to Senator Carley first. Was, I believe, 2 sessions ago, there was a bill that came forward that moved the unclaimed property budget from informational to generally funded. And Lieutenant Governor Venhuizen, who was in here and talked about, said it's still money in, money out. So even though it technically is coming from the general fund, it's really funded through unclaimed property dollars. And we talked, quite a bit about that during our original hearing as well, that it does not have a direct impact on the bottom line of the general fund budget. With that, Mr. Chair, Representative Jorgensen really covered, everything I wanted to talk about pretty well. I would just tell you that over the last 5 or 6 years, we've had a dramatic increase in the number of foreign claims that have come in. And that, as I said in our original hearing, we really need a couple people who speak Spanish. That can talk with folks, and a lot of the documentation that comes in is in a foreign language as well. And so there's a fair amount of risk there with, the 3 people that really do this on a day-to-day basis. And, quite frankly, we're having trouble keeping up. Again, I'll publicly thank the governor's office for the recommendation of 1 FTE. Our original request was for 3. We pared it down to 2. And like I said, when we came up for our budget hearing, this is my last opportunity to ask you all for what I feel the department truly needs. These folks will really be working once I'm gone. But, understanding the workload and talking with our team, we felt 2 FTE was adequate. And I'll play Batman. Do you want to play Robin? Do you have anything you want to say?
No, I think you handled everything just fine. Thank you.
Mr. Treasurer, can you rewind that? I apologize. I was slightly distracted there. does this or does this not have general fund impact?
It does not have a,
74,000.
it does not directly impact the bottom line of the general fund because it is paid through unclaimed property dollars. Again, like we talked about a couple of years ago, there was a bill that changed us from informational to generally funded. You know, and you can even go back and listen to those comments from Representative Van Huysen. It's still money in, money out.
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Melhoff then. So on our motion sheet recommendations, we have 174,009. Was this deducted from, was that included in the deduction of total items above?
Mr. Chair, if I can maybe explain a little bit on unclaimed property. So prior to the creation of the unclaimed or the trust fund for unclaimed property, prior to that, all the unclaimed property came to the general fund. So in a sense, you could think all the unclaimed property is general funds. Once that was created, the general fund only gets so many dollars every year, and that's a set dollar amount that comes to the general fund after that was done. And when the treasurer is referring to that bill that was done, where they took the other funds and made them generally funded, any change to the treasurer's budget will need to be generally funded now because those operations come out of general funds. The state general fund only gets that $55 million transfer, or what is it, 62 maybe? 62 this year. So those general funds that come in from that were already were already in the budget. So any increase in general funds for operations will need new general funds. Because what was budgeted already is part of the budget. That's coming as part of that transfer.
Okay, is anyone else confused? So that 174,009 is coming from general funds, was included in the total of items above.
That's correct.
It does have a general fund impact, Mr. Treasurer. And
So-
then we'll have BFM.
Yeah, the BFM
Weigh
can talk
in.
about this a little bit too, but, so I'll talk about the trust fund bill that passed last year. You'd have to help me with the bill number, I don't have it written down, but really what it says is, so the general fund will receive $62 million in funds this year, and then it walks its way down over the next 10 years. But when you look at that, what it also says is, after you get those dollars, and then after our expenses are paid, then the rest of the dollars go into the trust fund. So what my belief is yes, it's generally funded, but those dollars are coming from unclaimed property to the general fund to cover those expenses. And I'm sure BFM can talk about that a little bit too, and this is in relation to that trust fund bill you all passed last year.
Okay, very good. I think we will have Commissioner Twilliger come up now. What about the
Expenses from
Yes, sir. Good morning again.
Good morning. How are you doing, sir?
Good, thanks.
Do you
Please
need
identify yourself.
Jim Twilliger with the Bureau of Finance and Management? Would you like me to clarify anything or add to
Yes,
that discussion?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Clarify and add.
for a long time, unclaimed property was budgeted through other funds. I believe it was an informational budget. So funds, basically the unclaimed property funds in that mechanism were used to fund the operations. I'd say 3 or 4 years ago, that budget mechanism was changed to budget directly with state general funds for the operational side. So that's a discussion we're having right here. And so general funds are used for the operations of unclaimed property today. And so then, again, that plays into the trust fund bill that came through last year and so on and so forth. And so, in a sense, everybody is right when they say, hey, there are general funds that come in from unclaimed property. But from a budget perspective, right now, you're budgeting general funds, budgeting general fund expenses for the unclaimed property operations. Hopefully that helps.
Senator Voida.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you just speak to why the governor did not recommend the $174,000 for the claims analyst specialist?
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, good question. You know, I'll kind of go back to what I mentioned earlier, is there's a balance that has to be struck when you're looking at individual budgets, and then you're also looking at the big picture. So last fall, when you're looking at the big picture and we were looking at no inflationary increases, that changes the way you look at things to some extent. And then you have to ask yourself, are these really truly mandatory? Are these absolutely needed to run the operations when you're looking at a 0% increase? Because each time you consider additional increases outside of inflation, that inhibits your ability to do inflation. Does that make sense? So you're having conversations about doing 1.25, 1.4, 1.5% inflation. If you fund all of these individual requests, that takes funding off the table to do inflation, if that makes sense. And so those are a lot of the things that we wrestle with. And so when we're going through the process, again, as I mentioned with PUC, it's like, hey, are 3 additional FTE necessary for all the operations? And if you look at historically over the last 5 or 10 years, unclaimed property has been at elevated levels for at least 5 years, if not maybe even longer than that. And so I think it's appropriate to recognize that's where we recommended one of the FTE, but the other 2, at least at that point, was just too far in our opinion. Again, if we recommend everything that's requested in every budget that comes in, we're upside down by $100 million, no question about it. And so we have to go through that and prioritize and look at it a big picture and individually. And so that's kind of where we landed with the Treasurer's Office budget.
Okay. Senator Voida.
Just as a quick follow-up then, so just to make sure I'm understanding this correctly though, with the treasurer, the 174,000 in general funds, yes, it is general funds, but I think the number was 62 million that's coming in, going to the general fund. So is it 62 million plus if we were to approve this 174,000, or is it minus what is coming in?
Mr. Chair. So I separate it and I look at one side of the budget equation at a time. So the revenue side is fixed. You're not going to get any more of general funds that'll come in on the revenue side. If you go 174,000 farther, you're increasing your expenses, and so you're going to be worse off by 174,000, everything else held constant. So you're a net negative to the general fund on the fiscal impact if you move forward to adopt the 2 additional FTE.
Follow up, Senator Voida. Did that answer your question? No, that's not answered half the question, I think.
Well, I think I'm going to pull up the bill and see what that bill was written as, because I'm just...
Can I take one more stab?
Yep.
The revenue,
yes, Commissioner.
On the revenue side of the budget equation for unclaimed property, it is fixed according to law. It doesn't change no matter what you do on the expense side of the equation. Does that help? And so if you adopt this general funds, the revenue does not fluctuate with what you're doing here. And so if you increase your expenses, you're worse off in terms of the net impact of the general fund by 174.
Senator Voida, does that answer your question? I think it does. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Casson.
Yes, so Section 5 says, and what he's referring to is beginning in fiscal year 2026 and each fiscal year thereafter, the state treasurer shall, upon paying from the unclaimed property auditing fund, all claims and any administrative costs associated with the sale of unclaimed property, deposit in the general fund the net receipts from unclaimed property up to the general fund contribution limit.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd add one more comment. Is it related to some recommendations that came from legislative audit? It's pretty common for recommendations to come from legislative audit as it relates to internal controls. I don't necessarily want to go down this whole path. Last year, we had some pretty robust legislation dealing with internal controls. And, that's also a balancing act. Because if we are to eliminate every question when it comes to an internal control or having 2 or 3 sets of eyes looking at every single transaction, then you end up spending more than on the control than the risk of, having somebody do fraudulent. So there's a business case to be had when it comes to all of that. And so could I come up here and justify various FTE and other departments about, hey, we need to have 2 or 3 people looking at this? I think that can happen very frequently. And so there's a balance to consider with that in terms of some of those recommendations that come from our good friends at Legislative Audit.
Representative Jorgensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is really important, and I think it's important, first of all, we're having unclaimed property amounts in the millions of dollars come in. So we had up to 62 million this year, and I understand now that goes into the general fund, and so that is being paid by unclaimed property. That's 62 million, and so I understand how now taking out the 174,000 actually comes out of the general fund, but that goes back to help the treasurer and the unclaimed property division do their work. And they are having more and more foreign entities who are coming, and we're dealing with millions and millions of dollars. And one of the and I think it's just very important that we have really good oversight. And I think that this is more than needed. Been kind of in the midst of this unclaimed property for quite a while. I really appreciate what Senator Howard did in really pushing forward with the trust fund and how that's going forward and how we're going to look forward to having more money come out of that. But there's a lot of fraud, and you're talking millions of dollars. And I think this is a small percentage of the 62 million that's going into the general fund to make sure that we can cover that. And I think it's well worth funding this. So I would encourage your yes vote on this. Thank you.
Representative Auk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I encourage you also to consider this. These dollars are unclaimed property. They aren't necessarily the property of South Dakota citizens. Well, they're South Dakota citizens. They have to claim it. The treasurer has made it very clear that there's a linguistic issue. He needs to hire someone of a Spanish-speaking orientation, at least 2. There needs to be checks and balances any time that you have this high of dollar value. Someone goes on vacation. Someone needs to be able to take over for them that speaks Spanish. I view this as the extreme importance to make sure that we're being responsible with these unclaimed property dollars or unclaimed property. And 174,000 to the treasurer is, I look at it as something that is extremely important and necessary. So please, I encourage you to vote for this.
Additional discussion? Senator Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand where Commissioner Twilliger is coming from. I don't disagree with his comments, but having worked in this world my entire career, the DLA carries a lot of weight with me. When they recommend something like this, I have to respect their recommendation. I'm going to be a yes on this.
Further discussion? Senator Voida.
Well, I'm going to be resisting this because here we are, the second budget setting of the day, and we have a governor who has recommended pretty frugal and modest increases in 2 budgets, and we obliged in one already, and now here we're going to add some more FTEs, and we're making government bigger, so I'm going to resist this.
Senator Carley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so just a quick little comparison. We just approved PUC to have, almost overwhelmingly approved PUC to add some positions. And if we look at the PUC, they both generate revenue and although it was a small amount of revenue, but the most compelling thing to approve that with PUC was they said that was going to save us money. So I think a lot of us saw that and said, hey, we're saving money by bringing those 2 positions. Now let's pivot here to treasurer. The treasurer is actually generating money, a lot of it. $62 million. And so that money flowing back to the general fund, for us to use a very tiny portion of that for an increase to manage that particular fund, I think makes a lot of sense, especially since they're really a revenue producer. So I'd encourage Jorgensen's motion on this. Thank you.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Representative Sharda.
Can I just clarify? So we're talking about C4 right now, but if we pass C4, we still plan on passing C1, so it'll be 3 additional FTE.
Yes. Correct. The answer is yes.
Thank you.
Representative Norström.
I was crystal clear on this until the last comment. It looks like to me that the governor recommended one, and the office of the treasurer recommended one more. It looks like we're adding up to three now. And I thought the testimony from the treasurer is their grand total was going to be two. Could we maybe have the treasurer come forward?
Mr. Chair.
We're on C4. And Jorgensen's not moving C2.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Cassidy.
Yes, so, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I believe the treasurer said that the two positions you're requesting are for the claims analyst and specialist, and then said that he had received the one position from the governor for the administrative clerk.
That's already been approved
Mr. Chief.
Yes, even though it has your name on it, let's clarify that. Yes, Representative Jorgensen.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm not moving the administrative clerk at 87,000. The governor recommended the administrative clerk at 80,000. What we're talking about is C4, which is the claims analysis and specialist at 174. And that's looking to get a couple of Spanish speaking, hopefully. I think that was the thought process there. But they have so many claims that they're, I recommend that we go with C4. Thank you.
Does that clear it up, Representative Norström?
No.
Okay.
Real
Let's give
close.
it one more stab
Real
here.
close, but not there. But so I think what we're saying is that the treasurer's office is recommending two new people, and we're voting on C4, which is two new people. And I see the heads up and down. So
That's correct. Okay, any further discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Representative Auk.
I make a motion that we move C4 as recommended by Representative Jorgensen.
Motion by Representative Auk, seconded by Senator Carly. Discussion on the motion to move C4.
I think we've discussed this. Once again, I see the value in these two positions. From a financial analysis position, making sure that claims are done properly, checks and balances. I think these two positions are extremely important to the state of South Dakota.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Representative Norström.
And this is not a motion, this is a question. Would it be appropriate to, at least, I would think we should have a conversation about one FTE and then half the funds if the committee is interested in cutting the baby in half? Or the prime sponsor is interested.
We have a motion on the floor and we have discussion, unless you want to put forth a substitute motion.
I guess that's the question I'm asking the body, is if there's interest in voting on the prime.
So I'm a no, and I'm a no for that because I believe that if you're going to have, I mean, you're dealing with millions and millions of dollars. And my hope is, and I think what they're trying to do, which makes sense, is to get those two positions. If they're Spanish speaking, they're dealing with a lot of fraud. And I look at the numbers for the amount of revenue we have of people that are working in that office, looking at what other states are doing. And, I mean, I know they have the numbers, but our numbers are very low for the amount of work we have and the amount of money we're generating and the amount of money we're working with. So I would like to see us stay with the current recommendation. Thank you.
Any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor. C4. Secretary, call the roll.
Senators and Representatives, Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk.
Aye.
Casson. Moore.
Aye.
Billhauer. Carly.
Aye.
Boyda. Jorgensen. Howard. Absent. Foster. Charda.
Aye.
Mucky.
Aye.
Zickman. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
No.
Otten.
No.
Derby?
Aye.
14 yeas, 3 nays, 1 absent.
Okay, motion to adopt C4 hereby passes. All right, now we have a recommendation.
Mr. Chair, I move we recommend the remainder of the governor's budget for the office of the state treasurer.
Representative Norstrop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move to set the budgets for the Treasury Management, unclaimed property, informational, unclaimed property operations at the level detailed in the State Treasurer's motion sheet, which includes $2,505,794 in general funds, $57,600,105 in other fund expenditure authority, and 14 FTEs.
Motion by Representative Norstrop, seconded by Representative Mucky. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none. Secretary, call the roll.
Miss Gimmons?
Aye.
Auk?
Aye.
Casson? Moore?
Aye.
Billhauer? Carly?
Aye.
Boyda? Jorgensen? Howard? Foster? Sharda?
Aye.
Mucky?
Aye.
Zickmund? Colbeck?
Aye.
Norstrup?
Aye.
Lapke?
Aye.
Otten? And Derby.
Aye.
17 yeas, 1 absent.
Motion to set the budget for the state treasurer hereby passes. Okay, moving on to the Department of Transportation.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
personal privilege.
Yes, Representative Sharda.
My parents are here today. I try to explain to them what goes on in this room, and it's hard to explain, so they came to check it out. So John and Marla Sharda, so welcome them.
They're still awake, John.
All right. Well, thank you for loaning Representative Sharda to us for the last 9 weeks. We appreciate it. Okay, moving on to the Department of Transportation staff.
Mr. Chair, Mitch Honan, LRC. We have the Department of Transportation budget before you. There are 3 components. You have the governor's recommended, you have a line from Representative Norstrup, and then you have the unutilized FTE and authority right sizing line here, which is assigned to Senator Voida.
Okay, discussion. Representative Norstrup, you want to talk about yours?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will not be moving that.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Voida, or Senator Voida, would you like to comments?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We are reducing the federal authority by 10 million, which from my understanding, the conversations after our work group is kind of what was the agreed upon middle ground. Just for reference, DOT in FY25, their federal fund reversion amount was $29,834,063.
Okay, any further discussion? Secretary Junt, would you like to respond to Senator Voida's unutilized FTE and authority motion sheet?
Mr. Chairman, Joel Junt, Secretary, Department of Transportation, and I believe Commissioner Twirliger spoke earlier relative to this, that we work with both BFM and LRC relative to these, and we can work within this budget request.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator Voida?
There is another, there's a 10 million and a 20 million. I didn't see that second one on this budget item, so there's another one in B1.
Yep, there sure is. All good? Thumbs up? Commissioner, Senator Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could somebody just remind me what the more than 40 million in federal fund authority is for the long-term railroad capital planning?
Sure.
What that's going to be used for?
Mr. Chairman, Joel Junta again with the DOT. So these are funds that we receive from the federal government because we do not have passenger rail in the state. And so about every year allocated about $27 million. And then the State Rail Board puts those out for private entities and as well as a DOT that has state-owned rail. And then those grants are eventually decided upon by the State Rail Board, submitted to FRA. And then once those grant agreements are approved, then we're able to go out and let projects and move those forward. So it's for those specific freight rail in particular.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So are these privately owned railroads that we're giving these funds to, or most of them staying with state-owned?
Mr. Chairman, so they've been a mixture of both. I don't remember the year, but you folks had approved $20 million of general funds to go to RCP and E. And that was an $84 million project. Your $20 million provided a match as well as what they brought to the table. So it is a mixture. We are down to just 2 state-owned rails right now. We have the Britain line, which goes from Aberdeen north to North Dakota, and then the Napa to Platte line. And so as we've been selling these off, what the state would be asking for is less and less. So it's shrinking, but definitely for the private side to help with their freight infrastructure.
Follow up.
I just want, okay, just for everybody listening, I just want to make clear, but these are privately owned railroads, privately owned businesses for the most part.
Mr. Chairman, those entities that own short line railroads in the
Right.
state, it's not the class ones, which would be NSF, but it is with the short line, those class twos.
Okay, Senator Vilhauer.
I've got a question. Maybe it's not appropriate to ask, but I'd like to ask Representative Northstrip why you're not recommending your transit provider grants.
Representative Northstrop.
Thank you, and I appreciate the question. In conversations with the transit organization and LRC, we think it's not necessary.
Follow up? Can I ask, not necessarily, being aware of transit situation across the state, why would those funds have not been necessary? Are they being subsidized somewhere else, or?
I would ask, I believe Mitch was involved in that.
Isn't there been a reauthorization of some federal program that affects?
Mr. Chair, Mitch Honan, LRC. My understanding of the conversation is that there were some one-time COVID monies that have expired. There are some ongoing federal grants that are still present, and then there are efforts by local government and riders to contribute to the operations of these providers.
Thank you.
Representative Northstrop.
If Secretary Junt would want to weigh in on this, we'd be glad to hear his opinion.
Mr. Chair, I probably should have went and sat down. I think Mitch did a great job of explaining it. Those COVID funds are expiring this year, as well as some of the other grants that are out there. So, and I think the other aspect of this these are general funds, and as you know, DOT has very limited amount of general funds in our overall budget, and so this would be, you would be making a change from an overall standpoint relative to this. So, Mr. Chair, if I could also, Senator Howard, just to relay the state aspect relative to those, there are no state matching funds that goes into these federal grants that go to these. The private entities provide the match on those. So I just wanted to clarify that too.
Follow up?
Yes, Representative Northstrop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This would be to Mitch. The red flag was raised when you said that the local governments would be contributing. That's new information for me. Is that an issue?
I would actually defer that to the Secretary, please.
Mr. Chair, so as you heard my presentation for public transit, there's both federal, state, and local governments that provide the funding overall to make sure that they have sufficient funds. There was a bill here this past session, House Bill 1297, that was going to request of a general funds $125,000 to do a study. My department, and through the funding that we typically have, has a research program, and we agree to fund that research program, so the bill was withdrawn. And I think truly looking at public transit and the funding that's needed for that, that research is really going to help you and help us truly understand what the overall request should be coming in the future for public transit. So in my mind, it would be good to defer any action here today and wait until that study gets done here in about a year, year and a half, and see exactly what that shows, and then make decisions based on that.
Senator Carly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to the rail for a moment, you mentioned because we do not have passenger rail service, we receive 27 million plus in funds. If we did have rail service, what would happen to those funds? Would those funds go away?
Mr. Chairman, yes, those funds would go there. There's only 3 states in the nation that do not have passenger rail, and each one of us, based on the amount of rail miles that we have in the state, it's a formula, and that's how we receive the allocation on a yearly basis. But again, Congress does not appropriate that every year, so we're waiting for the notice of funding opportunity to still come out, both for last year and for this year coming up.
Representative Hauk, did you have a question?
Well, maybe more of a comment in reference to the transit. And you were mentioning a study, but our transits are in need of money now. From what I understand, in my district, they are struggling now. And so are we anticipating that locally they'll be funded until the completion of this study or until next year?
Mr. Chairman, so there's definitely a need there. But if you look at both what the federal program, and you see the federal dollars there of the $754,506, we're anticipating a 2% increase in the federal dollars for the public transit. We have about another $26,000 in state funds that will go towards those. So there actually is an increase this year to help the public transit providers.
Follow up. So will they be fully funded like they were in the past, or how much of a lack is there in the COVID dollars versus what you are saying federally? I guess just for past reference, if you could please tell us.
Mr. Chair, I don't have those numbers at my fingertips, but the COVID dollars, they had, I believe, 4 years to be able to expend those. And so as those funds were sitting, waiting for they to be expended, some of the other federal dollars that were allocated to provide to them, we have an opportunity to lapse on those, not lapse and losing it, but lapse on the time frames. And so now that is all caught up, and so we're able to continue to provide increased funding for them. But I would say in the future, again, looking at what the study is going to provide, there definitely needs to be a look at how much funding is going to them overall. But I will say also that we're all dealing with revenue deficits and changes and everything else. And as they're looking at this, they really need to look at the funding that they receive, both from the feds, the state, and the locals, and make some probably some tough decisions, just like the rest of us are doing.
Senator Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm going to say I appreciate that Senator or Representative Northrup is not bringing this. I do not see the need for this state, especially not when we can't even meet our statutory obligations already. With teacher pay, et cetera, the inflationary increases. So I don't see the need for us to go down, expand the state responsibility into this. Transit, whether it's Watertown, Sioux Falls, Rapid City, whatever, that's a local issue. And I really do not see the need for the state to go down this road of expanding and taking on more responsibility that really should stay local. So I appreciate the fact that that was not brought as an alternative motion.
Okay, any further discussion? We have Senator Voida. Aren't we at the point where we need to start moving these?
I make a motion.
We need a recommendation. Yeah, move the governors and vote.
Oh, okay. Senator Lapke.
Mr. Chair, I recommend we approve the governor's recommended budget for the Department of Transportation, as well as lines A5 and B1.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Representative Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move to set the budgets for general operations, construction contracts, informational at the levels detailed in the Department of Transportation motion sheets, which includes $729,132 in general funds, $863,509,008 in federal fund expenditure authority, $406,468,851 in other funds expenditure authority, and 1,014.3 FTEs.
Motion by Representative Norstrup, seconded by Senator Voida. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk.
Aye.
Casson. Moore.
Aye.
Vilhauer. Carly.
Aye.
Voida. Jorgensen. Howard. Foster. Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky. Zickman. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten. Derby.
Aye.
16 yeas, 1 nay, 1 absent.
Motion to set the budget for the Department of Transportation hereby passes. Thank you. Okay, we've got one more for this morning. The Department of Agricultural and Natural Resources. Staff?
Mr. Chair, Jocelyn Jessup, LRC. What you see before you is the governor's recommended with a couple alternative motion sheets. In 031, 032, I think there's another one in 036. You gotta keep going. Yep, there we go, in 036. That's all.
Let's start with Senator Howard. Discussion on your motion sheet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So B5, if everyone remembers, the governor, or was there a bill? Now I can't remember. But anyways, the entire hemp program is being eliminated at the state level. However, the request was only to eliminate 200,000 and the 3 FTEs from the budget. But if everybody remembers back, when we created the state hemp program, we actually gave them 350,000 in ongoing revenue for that program, along with the 3 FTEs. So with the elimination of the program, I believe that all of that funding should be eliminated. I think that's what's most transparent to taxpayers who are paying this. To only cut it by the 200 versus the 350, you are eliminating the program, but you are essentially telling the taxpayers that we're still going to keep taking 43% of the money and use that on other items, which is not what it was intended for. So this simply right-sizes that and says, okay, the program is being eliminated, so all of the funding will be eliminated. And the 3 FTE, that's what was recommended by the governor, so there's no change there.
Any further discussion from the committee? Mr. Secretary?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Hunter Roberts, Secretary, Department of Ag and Natural Resources. I guess I would encourage you to strongly oppose the Howard Amendment. Since 2016, the department has not increased our non-personal services of general funds. So we have not increased that level. What that does is it pays for testing, it pays for our in-state travel. So let's say you have, we're going out to test dairy products at a grocery store. We'll check those, make sure they don't have listeria or personal health issues. It takes money to do that. It costs lab time to do that, to go check those, and we've seen increases in those over the last 10 years. 30% since 2022 on our lab testing. What is our cost for travel, in-state costs? I mean, it's gone up a bunch the last 10 years. So things like that are very clear. Looking at the different divisions, another example of kind of where that would happen, if we had a pesticide spill, in that program, we do not have other funds, if we cut this, to go address that pesticide cell and make sure that we test what was put into our state environment, and we had the oversight to make sure that it's cleaned up appropriately. It's definitely a very broad swath if you look at kind of when you get into the weeds on what that type of cut would have. So what I would say is, over the last 7 years that we've had hemp program, and with those cuts, is that we've absorbed that through the budgetary process. And those additional expenditures are critical for us to do our mission to protect human health and our environment. So with that, I encourage you to oppose the Howard Amendment.
Commissioner Senator Howard.
Well, just rebuttal, if I could. Sadly, what I hear is to me some budgeting practices that we should discourage. If the agency needs additional funding, whether it's to address spills or to address other things, then they need to come to appropriations and they need to request those funds for those programs. But all we're addressing today is the fact that the hemp program is being eliminated. That's not my recommendation. That's coming from the executive branch to eliminate the hemp program. So I'm simply saying these funds should not have been absorbed into the rest of the budget. The taxpayers expect good budgeting practices. So if the program's eliminated, the taxpayers expect the money for that program to be cut.
Commissioner Terwilliger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Terwilliger, the Bureau of Finance and Management. I'd offer a few different thoughts. I understand where Senator Howard is coming from in regards to this motion sheet, because last fall, when this came up, and Secretary Roberts, we started this conversation. I'd also note that started this conversation, basically voluntarily came forward. We have these discussions all the time. Voluntarily came forward and said, hey, we're looking at this program. We think this could actually save some taxpayer dollars. You know how many other agencies have come up in front of this committee and done that this year? Probably the only one, okay? And so we asked these exact same questions. Hey, there was $350 put in when this hemp program was started. And they justified, and we worked through things, and it's like, hey, $200,000 makes a lot of sense. If we want to start this over, we can justify the delta on the $150,000. I promise you we can. And as I work with Secretary Roberts on this, it truly was a partnership. And so I really see this as this is good behavior that's coming from Danner. You heard the Secretary mention they hadn't had any increases since 2016 outside of personal services. What other agency can you say that about in state government? And so this is good behavior where we want agencies to come forward with ideas to save taxpayer dollars, and now you're penalizing him for doing that by $150,000. And if you go forward with this, I would expect we're going to have to come in next year and put the funding back in to justify it. And if you want us to do that, here in the next couple of days, we can do that. But we look through, last year, I'll give you a prime example, talk about budgeting practices. There's a request in Danner's budget for $66,000 in general funds for rent for a bill that has to be paid. Those funds were not appropriated. Okay? Those are funds that were not appropriated in their budget, and they had to figure out a way to make it work, and they have. And now you're penalizing good behavior from a state agency. I'd ask you to oppose this.
Thank you. Further discussion? Senator Howard, any further discussion? Discussion?
Well, Mr. Chair, I would just, when the comment was made that they might need to be back here next year, that's what I would encourage them to do. If they need additional funding in other areas of the budget to address other items, then that's what they should have already been doing, is coming to us, going through the appropriations process and asking for those increases, rather than sliding funds over from one program and using it for something else. So,
Representative Colbeck.
Just a quick question for the commissioner from Danner. we approved hemp production in the state of South Dakota not too many years back. Can you tell me, number one, the increase in the number of acres that hemp that we're now producing? I know the processes that we have to go through in order to get registered and all that, and it costs the department money, and we have to do that, and we pay for some of that as far as raising hemp and also. But can you give us some kind of ideas how many acres that has increased over the past couple of years, and what that has done to the state's economy? Or I know you can't give that number, but how that's helped in the ag industry in the state of South Dakota?
Mr. Chair. Representative Colbeck, good question. I guess we've seen kind of some ebbs and flows in the industrial hemp program. We've seen it go from 0 acres, 6-7 years ago to in 2024, I think we harvested about 3,000 acres, which was the most in the nation. And that's mainly the feed and fiber side. That's the grain and the more like we do row crop agriculture in South Dakota. Not much of that CBD. I think it was less than 0.1% were CBD acres. This year we had a down year. We harvested 1,100 acres instead of the 3,000 plus last year. So we had a down year this year. Some of that's tied to processing, but it's a newer industry, but there's going to be ebbs and flows to it as the farm economy changes. Good question.
Representative Auk, and then
Thank you.
Senator Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is for Commissioner Roberts. I understand him. I grow Arona berries, another industry that was supposed to be this big boom, and anyhow, I completely understand. And I think hemp is coming.
What was that? What do you grow?
Aronia berries. Oh,
Help us out.
I got 7 acres of them, and yeah, highest antioxidant berry you can grow commercially, but there's no market. Don't start growing them, trust me. So I think that's the key. So the 150,000 that you're asking to keep in your budget, why is there no budget request in the testing in the other areas in which you need those dollars allocated? Why isn't there a line item added in those areas, or an explanation for that? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I guess through our budget process, it didn't come to that specific a line item. I think you look at our ag and environmental services, the total budget that this would pull from is $407,000. Is what's spent on this other fund or this other operating type cost from general funds. So that would be rent, that'd be utilities, that'd be travel, it'd be lab testing costs, things of that nature. So, it's been 6 years of running the program, and that additional general funds has flowed into other parts of our ag and environmental services over to cover those costs. Like Commissioner Terwilliger mentioned, when rent was increased or when we needed to cover that rent for the Sioux Falls One Stop, that would be one example of additional costs that had to come from somewhere, and that was an example where that funding came from. I would say on the Aronia berry side, we've spent federal specialty crop dollars looking at different markets for that multiple times and still are doing that. There's a lot of health benefits to that Aronia berries if we could make it work.
They're kind of a broccoli berry. They taste like, they don't taste that good. They taste like dirt. But if you add a bunch of sugar, add a bunch of honey. I had my Arona berries this morning, but yeah, I've got probably 55,000 pounds of them every year. So yeah, they just sit in the field. They make really good deer feed.
Senator Foster.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm really torn with this because, one, I like full transparency and having budget items be allocated to what the need is there, and for the public to see that. And I think that what you're experiencing with the rent increases, and we're going to have to deal with this with other departments because we did, because of lack of transparency, there was, we weren't willing to increase those rent increases, and it forced departments to go and search for those in other areas, which I think created a situation of more lack of transparency. So I'm really torn because I do see that when a program is budgeted for at a certain amount and that program goes away, then I think the taxpayers anticipate that that amount would then return to general funds. But because it's being floated to cover rent increases and travel, although that they're needed, budgets need to have line items that show exactly where everything's going and not just have a plug that floats around to kind of cushion up a budget. But you're not the only department that's dealing with this because of those rent increases. And so I think as the appropriations, we need to look at that and see how that's going to be recovered, because here it's through this amount in other departments, it's through programs, services, and that's ultimately detrimental, and I think that needs to be addressed. So I guess I know that zero-based budgeting is not looked upon, highly at this point, but I think that this is another example of how that would be helpful to have a clear idea of what's allocated and what's needed. So I'm really torn on this because it's probably needed, but just the way that it's allocated here isn't the way I'm comfortable funding it.
Thank you, Senator. Any further discussion? We're going to take a quick recess here. Maybe we'll answer a couple more questions. Senator Voida, Representative Moore, and then we'll take a quick recess.
This one's for Commissioner Twillinger, I believe. Yes, you are. So far, we've been looking in the past up to today. With Project Bison, are we going to get more information and break some of this out for the appropriations moving forward?
Mr. Chair. Yes is the answer, absolutely. There'll be more detail, more tools, so the answer is yes, Representative.
Thank you very much.
Representative Norstrop, question?
Thank you for Commissioner from Danner.
Mr. Secretary.
Excuse me, thank you. I think the committee is struggling with the vocabulary in that it says state hemp program elimination, and then the dollars isn't going away. So, but I think you've given some justification related to dairy and pesticides that the money could be spent on. I guess the question that I would ask is if we were to delay this till later this afternoon and allow you to draft a different motion, help us draft a motion sheet that does what eliminates the program, but then funds those other $150,000 needs so that we can be voting on something that is matched up with reality.
Mr. Chair? Yes, Representative Norstrop, we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a 7-minute recess.
SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. From choir to debate to theater, SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. from children's programs to in-depth documentaries. SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder.
All right, thank you. I'd like to come out of recess for the Joint Committee on Appropriations, and we are on the Department of Agricultural Natural Resources budget setting, and we've finished up discussion on B5, Senator Howard's motion. There was some prefatory remarks. Representative Norstrup was putting together an alternative motion sheet, and we talked about no surprises coming down the home stretch, and having new motion sheets at this time constitutes what I think that, and so Representative Norstrup, your decision is to not introduce that other alternative motion sheet, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And so at this time, we would entertain a motion on B5, Senator Howard.
I would move, do you want a motion or just a recommendation? A motion, okay. I would move motion sheet B5.
Okay, motion by Senator Howard, seconded by Senator Voida. Discussion on the motion.
I would just please encourage everyone to do pass this. I think the taxpayers deserve transparency in the budgeting process, and that's simply all that this is. Thank you.
Senator Lepke.
I'm going to support the motion. You know, the original intent of beginning the hemp program is what that money was appropriated for. If those funds are going to be used for something else farther down the line, you know, I suggest, as discussed, they come back so that we have oversight on the issue.
Further discussion. Representative Auk.
Yes, I agree with both previous speakers. This is what, when I go back to my district and I hear there's no accountability, there's no transparency, this is exactly why we have these questions of our government is misappropriating, misusing funds. We allocated $350,000 for the hemp program. They no longer use it. That $350,000 should be brought back into the budget, and then if other funds are needed, they should be allocated where they're needed. This is where I run into problems trying to justify what we're doing, especially in this meeting or throughout state government. Those dollars were allocated for hemp. If they're not being used, they should be put back into the budget and then reallocated. I'll just repeat myself again, but this is where transparency and accuracy and right-sizing the budget comes in. And I strongly encourage you to support the motion.
Any further discussion on the motion? Representative Mucky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got to be honest, this is one of those where I don't know quite yet here how I'm going to vote on this, but I think it's important to state this for the record. You know, when we do have these conversations, I appreciate the agency being willing to cut their budget. I think the challenge we're going to have here going forward is if we're going to hold to these principles, we need to hold them consistently across all of our budget units. And that's going to be one thing I appreciate Representative Northrup being willing to bring up the conversation about a motion sheet. We're past the 11th hour. It's time for us to move forward. But I think it's important for us to say if we're going to do this here, let's be mindful of how we approach this for others as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Secretary, call the roll. On B5, Senator Howard's motion.
Senators and Representatives, Ms. Gimmons,
No.
Auk,
Aye.
Casson, Moore,
No.
Billhauer, Carly,
Aye.
Voida, Jorgensen, Howard, Foster, Sharda,
Aye.
Mucky,
No.
Zickmund, Colbeck,
No.
No.
Northrup, Lackey,
Aye.
Foster, Otten, Derby.
Aye.
That would be 10 yeas, 8 nays.
The Howard motion, B5, hereby passes. Okay. Now that that's done, and the other is the Senator Voida right sizing, which we can do all together, correct? And then Representative Mucky, yes, comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will not be moving this, and I want to thank the folks from Feeding South Dakota who brought this to our attention. So really quickly as to why I'm not moving this at this time. We brought the bill to you talking about the Local Food Purchase Assistance Program, a program that was discontinued by the USDA earlier this year. It was a farm to food bank contract system supporting primarily small family-owned farmers and ranchers. At this moment in time, having conversation with them, it sounds like there is actually appetite to return that program back into the Farm Bill going forward, which I think is a great move. Ultimately, anything to support our small farmers and ranchers that are growing food for the people here in South Dakota, I think is a good program. And so knowing that there is an option on the table going forward at this time and knowing our other priorities, I've chosen not to move this at this moment. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Mucky. Yes, Senator Voida, and then Senator Vilhauer, I believe.
Oh, I was going to comment on the other one, so if you have something on.
Just to clarify, Mr. Chair, so that means we will not be clicking on B4 and B6 then, correct? Okay, thank you.
Correct. That's correct. Senator Voida.
Okay, I just want to make a couple remarks about the right sizing one. So C3, we're reducing 4 FTE. In FY25, there was 31.6 unutilized FTE. In our work group, BFM testified that the 8 to 10 of those is from unfilled positions that ebb and flow with boards and commissions. So I hope that when we return next year that there will be even more of those FTE taken down. Line N1 is $300,000 in other funds. In FY25, there was $8.8 million in reversions and other funds. So I also hope that there will be more there. And I'm just going to comment on federal fund reversions for this agency. In FY25, there was $9.96 million in reversions. In the work group, that it was testified that roughly $4 million of that was on hold due to federal grants. But then I clarified with BFM that $4.5 to $5 million of that is indeed extra. So I'm a little bit frustrated to see that that is not on this list for this agency when our staff and BFM got together to see what we could agree upon. So that's just something to keep in mind for next year.
Thank you, and thank you for all your hard work on this too, Senator Voida. We've had some outstanding work groups, and that's just been a great year, so thank you very much. Okay, moving on to recommendations.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the remainder of the governor's budget and line items C3 and N1 for the Department of Ag and Natural Resources.
Representative Norstrop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to set the budgets for Administration, Secretary of Agriculture and Environmental Services, Resource Conservation, Forestry, Animal Industry Board, American Dairy Association, Informational Wheat Commission, Informational Oilseed Council, Informational Soybean Research and Promotion Council, Informational Brand Board, Informational Corn Utilization Council, Informational Board of Veterans Medical Examiners, Informational Pulse Crops Council, Informational State Fair, Financial and Technical Assistance Office of Water, Livestock Cleanup Fund, Informational Regulated Response Fund, Informational Petroleum Release Compensation, Petroleum Release Compensation Informational at the levels detailed in the Department of Agriculture and Natural Resource motion sheet, which includes $16,078,500 in general funds, $24,696,033 in federal funds expenditure authority, $57,482,871 in other fund expenditure authority, and 345.5 FTEs.
Motion by Representative Norstrop. Who is the second? Did I hear? Senator Voida. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Senators and Representatives, Ms. Gibbons. Aye. Auk.
Aye.
Casson. Aye. Moore.
Aye.
Billhauer. Aye. Carly.
Aye.
Boyda. Aye. Jorgensen. Aye. Howard. Foster. Aye. Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky.
Aye.
Zickmund. Colbeck.
No.
Norstrop.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten.
Aye.
And Derby.
Aye.
17 yeas, 1 nay.
Motion to set the budget for the Department of Agricultural and Natural Resources hereby passes. That takes care of our budget setting for this morning. We will be at recess. Senator Billhauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Personal privilege, please?
Yes, please.
I would like to introduce the whole passel of Billhauers that just showed up in a few minutes ago.
Yes.
I've got my wife Darla, she has been here before. I've got, where'd Ellie go? Oh, my daughter-in-law Ellie, and then we've got Kai, Desmond, and Shayla.
Thank you. Is there any other announcements? Representative Sharda.
Personal privilege?
Yes,
I'd like to
granted.
introduce Adam Long and his 3 kids. They're from District 2. He's running for District 2 House and just kind of checking what we're doing here. And his 3 kids are in homeschool, so they're seeing how government works. So welcome them, please.
Hey, thank you. Yes, Senator Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to add to that, he is prior Air Force and Navy, so covers a couple of bases there.
Okay, any other announcements? Anything else for the good of the cause? We're going to recess, and then the leadership will be meeting with the governor at 4:30, and then 15 minutes after that, we'll come back here and do I'll just run through it real quick. Department of Labor and Regulation, Department of Corrections, Unified Judicial System, Department of Health, Department of Human Services, Department of Revenue, and the Board of Technical Ed. We'll do those tonight. And we'll have a staff briefing on the supplemental bill. Thank you. We're in recess.
SDPB brings you closer to your government with gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.